Why German buildings are so ugly? This is what the videos say. I don't think so.
When Americans think of German cities, they might imagine something like this. Picturesque
I'm not American, but I picture something like this. High ceilings, big rooms, like 140-meter apartments. Nice.
historic quarters, quaint half-timbered houses,
And some of like that, yeah.
cozy cobblestone streets, and towering church spires rising
Exactly
above
what
medieval
I'm
town squares. And in some places, that postcard vibe still exists. But today, German cities usually look like this. Ugly doesn't
this?
even begin to describe it.
This is not
These
Berlin.
places feel flat out hostile, uniform, anonymous, and overwhelmingly
Looks
gray.
like
So, what happened? The short answer is bombs and cars, in that order.
bombs.
The more complex explanation involves an economy left in ruins, a housing crisis
I know
of
what happened in
unimaginable
1945.
scale, competing visions for a better future, and the most quintessentially German concept of all, bureaucracy.
Yeah, bureaucracy.
Back in the days of the German Empire, this is what cities looked like.
Very nice.
Fancy facades, intricate decorations, and tons of stucco. Up until World War I, architects tried to bring back styles from eras long gone, but still romanticized. Experts explain this as a sort of nostalgic escapism. With the rise of industrialization, noisy factories and smoky mines began to dominate the outskirts of bleak and polluted cities. In response, urban planners designed whimsical, richly ornamented homes as a kind of fantasy retreat from the gritty grind of daily life. Then, in the aftermath of World War I,
Don't
a
tell me what
radically
happened in the
new
train.
idea emerges.
I don't want to know.
In 1919,
I mean, I know.
architect Walter Gropius founds the Bauhaus
But don't depress
School
me right
in
now.
Weimar,
I know what happened
an
in the train.
avant-garde university blending crafts and fine arts. A little over 100 years ago, the world's first Bauhaus building is constructed.
Bauhaus.
A prototype for modern living meant to showcase just how innovative and revolutionary Bauhaus ideas could be. The Haus am Horn is something completely new at the time. A minimalist, cube-shaped domestic house with a super functional layout designed for efficiency and convenience. The sample building sparks significant dissent. Some people openly mock it, calling it everything from a Martian house and a polar station to a public restroom.
This is disgusting.
Others celebrate the concept. After all, Bauhaus is about more than just minimalist aesthetics. It's practical. With the deprivations of World War I in mind, Bauhaus embraces new and efficient building methods. The concept
ugly.
goes on to achieve widespread success,
nice.
gaining international
This
acclaim.
is not.
Experts say Bauhaus completely shifted the way we think about architecture. It introduced
Here in the UK, there is a company that building buildings like 3 stories, like private building. They're building it, I'm not sure, but they invented it. Like they build the building in the factory and then they just assemble it. It's crazy. And it's not for like few weeks. It's forever, like for a lot of time.
sleek materials like steel and glass, along with smooth and minimalist concrete walls. The Nazis, however, have no love for Bauhaus
Führer.
architecture. Subtle and functional is not exactly Hitler's style. The Führer wants classical pomp and historic grandeur, monumental buildings that scream power and control. So when Hitler takes power in 1933, he dissolves the Bauhaus. Its members scatter across the globe to the US, Switzerland, France, and the UK.
The last ship looked
Then
like
a few
it was
years later,
sinking.
the Nazis invade Poland and France. After World War II, great historic cities like Munich, Hamburg, or Hanover are left in ruins. That leads to an unprecedented housing crisis with millions displaced and homeless. To make matters worse, the population explodes. People are fleeing the devastated territories that Germany lost in the east, heading west. The economy starts kicking off, drawing masses
this
to the
video.
cities. With new prosperity,
It's
the baby
recreated
boom
in
kicks
color.
in. Germany has a
Like
serious
around a
housing
year ago.
problem. By the 1950s, the country is short around 5.5 million apartments. And so begins a massive construction boom. Cities have amazing histories. Take, for example,
But
Berlin.
this has not happened just in Germany. The entire world have had a massive construction timing in after the war. Not just Germany, like everywhere.
Berlin's roaring 20s. Say you have a talent for graphic design and capture some of that
So, for example, now in the last 20, 30 years, they kind of slow down, it feels like, but they are just building towers.
history in your work. Your friends love your stuff and want to buy some prints. Maybe it's time to professionalize. That's where Shopify comes in. Shopify lets you build your own online store in minutes so you can get your business or improve the one you already. German cities to their hegemony look like. Two sides clash. One advocates for an exact reconstruction that would restore German cities to their historic pre-war splendor. Take Munich, whose beautiful old town attracts millions of international tourists. Many of those historic buildings were completely rebuilt and restored one-to-one in the 50s and 60s. The other side demands the exact opposite. German cities should leave the past behind and prepare for the future.
People
overhauled
live
and
in
modernized.
cubicles.
Enough with the quaint and charming. Forget everything grand and pompous that could evoke memories of the traumatic Nazi era.
Why are you saying that
Bring
buildings
on
in
the cars
Germany are
and
really
planes.
ugly? It's
The
not so
future is
ugly,
built
just
with
like the
steel
new
and
buildings, not
concrete.
entire Germany.
The flagship city
Munich is
here
really
is
nice.
Hanover. It is one of the first places to embrace this
Berlin
new
really
path and
nice.
become a city intentionally designed for cars. The overhaul transforms the city. Roads become wide, roofs flat, and buildings modern. Historic landmarks are torn down to make way for new residential zones and an extensive highway system. The miracle of Hanover, as German media calls it, becomes a blueprint for many other cities. Bauhaus makes a comeback as well. In the 1960s, many German cities pushed for large-scale housing estates to tackle the still
very
imminent
communist
apartment shortage.
construction.
One of the most famous ones is built in Berlin in the 1960s and dubbed Gropiusstadt, after Bauhaus founder Walter Gropius.
It looks like,
has a noble vision,
Chernobyl, like
a satellite
communist.
city of light and space. A modern housing
the
complex
60s.
of 5-story buildings surrounded by parks and gardens. Simple, efficient, and
Chernobyl.
beautiful. Affordable, high-quality living for everyone. A model for the future of sustainable urban development.
Extremely ugly.
But things don't go as planned. The
In my
housing
opinion.
crisis forces developers to stretch the buildings up to 30 stories. The parks
Oh.
and gardens almost completely disappear.
Now it's beginning to
The
look like
promise of a
Israel.
better life never materializes.
This is Germany,
the project
actually.
primarily attracts tenants from lower economic classes.
Oh my god!
What was
I
meant
think
to become a
it's
project
I'm
primarily
pretty sure that
attracts
I'm
tenants
wrong,
from lower
but
economic
this
classes.
look like the buildings that El Al hit them.
What was meant
like
to
the
become
planes.
a future urban haven
No,
instead
it
turns
was in-
into a
I
stark
think it was-
symbol
no, it
of
wasn't
social
Germany, it was
struggle.
Holland.
Massive, bleak,
Amsterdam, I
and
think it was,
utterly
yeah.
alienating.
But it looked like it. Maybe it's
So
not.
while some
I don't
German
know.
cities continue to attract tourists with their comforting old world charm, many have turned into an
A what? Crack house?
The concept of Angstraum describes literally a space of fear, particularly referring to urban infrastructure. If you live in a larger US city, you're probably used to this. You're walking around late at night, maybe close to a train station, and suddenly you have to go down one of those sketchy-looking underpasses. No one is around, just long corridors and shadowy corners you can't quite see past. Something about it just feels off. German cities are filled with these spaces as well. As they were redesigned around the automobile, pedestrians got the short end of the stick. Again, car dependence may sound familiar if you're living in the US. Today, in many German cities, you need to take long underground passages to cross extensive motorways. Streetlights are not helping much either, as they're mainly doing what their name suggests, illuminating roads
Also,
and
in the
highways,
UK, the
leaving
streetlights
pedestrian
are
zones
shit.
in near darkness.
Complete shit.
German cities have historically had pretty solid public transportation, and yet cars take up a ridiculous amount of space.
No shit.
In Berlin, 15% of the city's entire
Berlin,
surface
look at
is
Berlin, she's
exclusively
so beautiful.
dedicated to car traffic. In 2020, the German capital went for a temporary experiment. It gave one of its most central streets a car-free makeover, with wooden benches, trees, and a dedicated bike lane. The experiment lasted for 3 years, until Berlin elected a new conservative mayor who scrapped the project. In other
Conservative.
countries, cities are making bolder moves
Only
against car
cars.
dependence. We live in Amsterdam, and there are not just one but two bigger channels constantly gassing the place up for its infrastructure
barely
projects,
cars in
to the point
Amsterdam,
it's a bit
right?
excessive perhaps.
Like in
to
the
know.
center.
Barcelona is combining regular city blocks into so-called super blocks. They are restricting car access and reclaiming space for public areas,
Barcelona is
parks, and
crazy.
playgrounds. The idea is inspiring. German cities like Cologne and Berlin itself are considering similar concepts. More light, more greenery, less traffic. Sounds like a pretty simple recipe that could massively benefit German cities. Any city, really. Which begs the question, why can't we have both affordable and beautiful cities? Can't we do modern without creating miserable concrete deserts? In Germany, a key obstacle is excessive, complex bureaucracy. The construction industry faces rampant regulation, fire safety, noise protection, energy efficiency, and a laundry list of other building codes.
Why not?
Every German state has its own laws, covering everything from parking space
This
dimensions
is
to
Germany.
stair
Why
width.
not? Everybody
In total,
should do
there are
that.
about 3,700 construction norms across the country. Many of them stifle creativity and exacerbate costs.
But then if
Costs
they're
that
ending
have to
up
be
in
cut somewhere
cubes, then
else,
it's proper
which
garbage.
often means that architects and developers need to fall back on drab designs and cheap materials like steel and concrete. Many architects we spoke to are criticizing this vicious cycle. They say it has led to standardized procedures devoid of any real connection to organic urban design and the actual needs of people. The ever-increasing use of glass is another issue. Not only do glass facades look cold and
actually
uninviting,
beautiful.
they're
What's
also
wrong with
terrible
it?
for the environment, trapping heat inside
Oh,
and
yeah.
reflecting it back onto the streets.
Yeah, right.
To be fair, beauty is a tricky subject to debate. In this video, we use the word ugly to describe a sense of alienation and an overall inhuman touch.
No, because this is
In the
just a
50s and
square
60s,
building.
it was
It
far
is
more
ugly
important
and
that
it's
people
very
had
small
homes,
from the
not how
inside.
they looked. And a lot of grand buildings of old simply didn't exist anymore. Today, modern buildings are generally much more energy efficient, which is crucial
they are
in the
tiny.
context of global warming.
And it's heat.
Aesthetics must be
It's easy to heat up a small space, not like the old construction where it was like really big. And the gas prices today are crazy.
a consideration, but not the only one. However, taking all that into account, in our view, German urban planning could benefit from a significant shift towards greener, more human-centric spaces.